Hi, I'm Gareth Bowen, and this is a roundup of the news. Or would be if I don't get distracted with the fact Microsoft put a screensaver up on my lock screen of a bluebird, some from black-crested monarch from Asia, I think, which is, according to the tags in the corner, which is a little alarming if you don't know the mental health connotations of such a bird, as that seems to be them changing my screensaver on a whim, and I ought to take a photo of it, but didn't. Anyway, as far as the news goes, if it's not Empress Palpatine, May, annoying me last year with her bid to scrap the Human Rights Act and telling the military to spend the right to life and liberty, it's Corbyn and Labour in the news pushing mental health, saying they want to increase it, complaining about the humanitarian crisis in the NHS, and pushing that they are the party of the many and not the few again. This lot annoys me for multiple reasons. Firstly, I pointed out to Millimand on Twitter when he was a few years back that this rhetoric was flawed, as government is for everyone, because if you ignore minorities and fuck them over, say by freezing them out of work or employment, and leave them to starve, say, on the streets, and by evicting them, following the Conservatives' example on human rights, what with the rise in food banks, and of course, the 286% rise in people sleeping rough since they came to power, it tends to get messy, and you end up with the humanitarian crisis and civil war like you'd get in, say, Syria, for example, or other countries elsewhere. Now, given I have been detained and tortured on a UK mental health ward previously across three Labour strongholds more than once, and given their MPs tend to not bother replying to people who comment on things, in particular our local MP, and given I'm aware of the years, there's always the occasional news story of people who've been murdered by nurses or doctors, which go through the courts where they're found guilty and the country and the UK publicly admits to. And given the other NH trusts have actually thrown people off boards of directors accused of genocidal war crimes in other countries involving torture, I always get worried with this support for the NHS. Where's it coming from? As despite all this, the people who ordered me tortured, which basically is injected against my will by, 5 people holding you down, if not more, getting dragged in a room to do it, while they pull your trousers down, kind of inject you in varied and interesting ways. The people who are still doing that are still working on those wards, and government keeps trying to bolster them. And it's like, why? People like Theresa May keep bitching with her wanting to shut down the Iraqi torture inquiry, where 3,000 cases were raised by human rights lawyers, and they keep shouting, it's a witch hunt, parasitic human rights people. And it's like, well, it's a tad annoying. As in, last week there had been news reports where ministers trying to stop abuses of the UK military in Northern Ireland from the 70s being prosecuted or raised again if people are over a certain age. And meanwhile, last year there was the second Kenya court case, news stories of being pushed through the court, with the abuses Britain did in the concentration camps in the 50s to the Kenyan people. The first court case of which the BBC reported Hague had said 90 million compensation was going to be paid out, and this was reported in 2013. Now, given the NHS had been restructured after the first time I was detained and tortured, I was hoping this would be enough for Britain to draw a line on torture and stop doing it. And yet they pulled me in the end of that year and tortured me again via injections against the will, trying to, stop me basically doing anything again. And those injections basically meant I couldn't read around or use a computer. And so, what with the witch and human rights links again, and Hunt being in charge of the NHS, and given the thousands of witches and psychics that were persecuted and killed in the burning times, it's all annoying. Now, some people assume Helen Duncan was the last witch to be tried under the English Witch Act before it was repealed, after she picked up on a serviceman and a military vessel that was sunk in the war, because they threw her in prison for a while. And yet, it hasn't gone away. The UK just transferred it to shutting people up and fucking people over using mental health legislation instead, on the quiet, so to speak. one can't help comparing the Catholic atrocities in Languedoc, France in 1210 when they massacred 20,000 people in Béziers, when Christian forces blinded 100 Cathars in Bram and made them walk in a line to Cabaret with a one-eyed commander left in charge, to comparing it to modern day secular psychology and their attempts to use injections against a person's will to shut psychics down and stop people like developing instinct, trusting, themselves, and working out that communication is actually passed on and it is actually provable with anyone who actually goes there and actually tries to do it for themselves. So yeah, it's like the let's just shut the psychic up and use mental health to do it, shall we? And never put any contradictory evidence to say it doesn't exist. Given that psychics and myself formulated our own conclusions and detailed our experiences and attempted to explain why we formulated those conclusions with the other dreams and what we saw, heard, and how it bore out and how it got compared, we can look at like the sciences like physics and chemistry and the medical industry, which seem reluctant to describe their experiments and tests they used to formulate their own conclusions and their own belief sets. I.e., what is it in the end of the day? Diluting a liquid a certain number of times till something doesn't change colour, or using smaller and smaller filters and seeing if something changes colour, or doing a scan after injecting some kind of chemical and seeing whether something changes colour if it's absorbed. And physics is just as bad. And I tried to get a magnet in some copper wire once and reproduced the experiments in producing electricity with wind turbines and didn't get anywhere with it. But I got results with the psychic side, so I can at least sign off on that kind of stuff as working. And yeah, and beyond that, the NHS and everyone are trying to spend more money on this NHS umbrella agency that tortures people for political and religious opinion. And it's like, why? And in the news this week, the Daily Mail reported 10 dolphins were washed up in a shore, dead, in Cornwall. And in another story, they reported that a UCL study showed that blindness in people aged 40 to 69 was 5 times more likely to occur. It's occurring 5 times more than people of that age from the 1960s. Why? Shouldn't that be a little worrying? Now, Hitchhiker's Guide jokes aside with dolphins and thanks for all the fish, which we'll come to afterwards regarding what fish, they're all poisoned, is when you start looking at the modern world and reports of studies where risk of cancer is higher around fields that spray pesticide, or walk into a British Heart Foundation charity store and see reports of studies in the press where links to air pollution increases the risk of stroke, you start wondering, and look at the anti-fracking stuff and the likes of water contamination, and it's like, how far do you go with it? Worker safety, preventing fires, that kind of thing. It's like, I was aware of news stories in the States where drinking water had been polluted on numerous occasions, like wells, and one story like 70,000 fish kind of being dead, killed when a water pipe burst at fracking, when a pipe for the chemicals that they kind of spray into the ground and stuff burst a fracking site. And Britain's argument seems to be that they go the other way, they're safer, they've got better standards. And looking on the internet today, I see a reference to the 2005 disaster at Sellafield being listed on Wikipedia, where a cracked pipe resulted in 20 tons of uranium and 160 kilograms of plutonium being leaked. And I've completely forgotten that the Winstellar Pile nuclear incident in 1957, where the UK milk supply got contaminated, as over 800 farms got hit by it apparently, and the public didn't get told, and milk prices dropped by 15% or something like that. At least that's what I'm reading online. And I obviously saw a reference to the sheep in the UK being contaminated after the 1986 Russian Chernobyl nuclear disaster. And it's interesting to note how all these nuclear plants seem to have more than one disaster over the years, or even in the same year. And it's like, and they don't always get reported officially, if at all. I was looking to see if I could get the Russian Mayak plant disaster in, what with Theresa May and Mars attacks, maybe, like ack type thing. But I no longer care, and I'm not going to try and work that joker, because it's not funny. As from what I can tell from that disaster, 8,015 people were linked as dead over the years caused from it, and that was with 70 to 80 tons of liquid radioactive waste being leaked into the Taka River or whatever it was called. And there was kind of a 20,000 kilometre radioactive cloud dust that travelled 300 to 350 kilometres in 10 to 11 hours. And it took more than 30 years to officially recognise it, but the CIA knew about it in 2 years but didn't say anything because of their own nuclear program and all that kind of thing. And I was noticing, but also reading up on it, that radiation-induced cancer is indistinguishable from any other types of cancer. But I don't know how accurate that is, because I'm not completely up on that cancer. And the more we find out, obviously, the more details you know. So it's like, as far as I know, needs to be inserted loads and loads of times. But and I'm also kind of curious how a person kind of hung themselves in a hospital ward in Worcestershire as well, the last year. When, they're reporting the trolley deaths, they kind of just flung that in. And obviously there's a scary number of suicides in the prison system that's kind of rising at the moment. But that's getting distracted. So perhaps I should just stick to news stories on the UK, like squirrels having leprosy. And months later, another news story of squirrels attacking kids and drawing blood from them because they're starting to get aggressive. As I look at the medical industry and whether diseases ever jump across species at all. But that would be scaremongering, and we don't want to go there. However, it is a good way to get squirrels and money in. So, yeah, where am I? Oh, yeah. So, looking at shows like Blake 7 and Babylon 5, with Blake 7, where the psychologist goes, we could kill Blake for you. And them saying whether that's publicly acceptable or not. Or a scene in Babylon 5 where the commander is told, there is no homeless on Earth. The kids are being treated under mental health earlier, type thing. Compared to Empress Palpatine Theresa May's speech on mental health intervention with the kids. That is one of those recent, they keep pushing for more and more mental health intervention on people. That probably means more torture and more shut the fuck up, or we pull you in without trial and we torture you again. And what with more news stories showing up and more on police officers with automatic rifles getting seen and people getting shot on the motorway, which it gets a little alarming, especially if you read a history book on Hitler, the rise of Nazi Germany, and compare them getting more police powers, say with Photo 1933 and their 39 to 45 war, and obviously the Jews in concentration camps, getting killed in their millions and stuff, and you kind of got wonder where it's all going. And people complain about this issue of like fake news on Facebook and that, and arguing about and them going to put filters in to remove it out, and it's like, well, is it going to be removing fake news, or is it going to be removing disavowed and unofficial signed off news? And who is doing the verification anyway? But who wants to go there? So as I reflect on money and where people who are focused on getting it say, we want money, what do they want it for, and what are they going to spend it on? Cleaning up the environment, protecting the food supply, renewable power, maybe giving housing and heating to the old people so they don't freeze to death on the streets, thus preventing the mental health and medical crisis to begin with, or letting people, government and corporations continue to fuck the people over and cause more and more people to need those services with in the first place, thus driving the demand for people to cry, we need more money here, or here. So yeah, freezing the society out, ignoring them, which leads to the 2011 riots, London riots, for example, or serious style civil wars, especially when governments are torturing people, and I know they are because I was, and when they give them detained without access to a lawyer, without trial, and it's kind of like, yeah, we'll let you out if you plea bargain or if you've got some blackmail material and can use out your later date, maybe. Complete and utter madness and incompetence of Britain never ceases to surprise me. What with the Brexit vote and people citing money, if not racism again. Let's do the maths on that, shall we, for a second? A government that is borrowing around 100 billion a year, with a political party sticking a notice up saying they would give 350 million a year a week to the NHS, claiming that it would get that via deducting the cost of the European membership fee. But they didn't deduct the cost of the rebate from that, which was detailed looking online, or the subsidies that come back into the country and fund other projects, which left them with 8.5 billion, which is okay, fine. Maybe that could be used, and yet they didn't deduct from that the £33 billion from lost business from the banks alone. And looking and trying to research this, as far as I can work out, as far as GDP concerned, on average 34% or slightly more than that is received as taxable income. And doing quick maths, that is, they've lost more money already than the cost of the membership fee, and that is before they start factoring in the falling currency, the rise of the rising food prices and stuff we're buying in overseas, and we're obviously not still dependent on everyone abroad because we're not self-sufficient as a country at all, certainly not in food, power or anything else as far as I'm concerned. And it's like, what's their massive strategy to get around this? One MP's basically wittering on about, let's become a tax haven and reduce taxes for the government that is continually overspending by 100 billion a year, and they're going to come here. Why? It'll be a civil war at this rate, especially with the people who are being turfed out on the bloody streets and getting fucked over in the court system without fair and equality trials or any of that crap. So yeah, so they're pushing the let's pull out of the single market and then the free movement of people, by playing the racism card, while they are killing their own and fucking everyone over behind the scenes. And no, I can't do it again. I suppose I could mention the only bright thing seems to be Rudd getting pulled in by the police and getting questioned over race crimes in one news story. That was probably more just for the cameras or anything. Anyway, enough of news and current events. This is Gareth Bowen. Goodbye and all the best, as I try and factor a few of the news stories that have shown up of late. But you can find more on the sextree.co.uk news site, where you can write your own news stories free of charge and get your voice heard, or find me on Twitter and Facebook, where I put up the occasional news stories and my views and stuff, because it's a bit hard to do it on a speech like this because it's a little short. So yeah, that's Gareth Bowen at thesextree.co.uk, or Gareth, or just do garethbowen.co.uk, because I'm still paying for hosting on that. Amazing, I'm keeping it up at the moment, but I'm getting to the point now where I may have to start seeing what I can do in that and push work and stuff. But I went to the Friends of the Earth anti-fracking protesting show and that on the 7th of January, and starting to do research again and even write a couple more news stories, as I haven't done any for a while. And yes, what to do with my time, I guess, considering I've been unemployed for nearly 10 years now, as far as no money coming in, because I'm obviously living on benefit at this moment in time. How long that will last with Theresa May and the Conservatives is anyone's guess, because I'll probably get fucked over really, really quickly. really, really soon. But never mind. Bye.